All right, everyone. Welcome back to this week's episode of Brainstorming with the Docs. I'm Dr. Kolby Condos, my co-host, as always, Dr. Glenn Harrison. How's it going, bud?
Doing good. I'm doing really, really good. You're looking kind of green today.
I know I was telling you earlier, I definitely should not do a green screen. I just look like a floating color in the head. So this was actually something that hit the email.
Hmm?
So today we're going to be talking about, because we already let a podcast out a little while ago about Hashimoto's and the autoimmune disease that impacts your thyroid. If you have that or have questions on it, make sure you listen to that one. But today, excuse me, the question we had in our email was, is there a specific diet? Because Dr. Harrison, as you mentioned in the last Hashimoto's podcast, that you eat certain ways. So today we're going to talk about certain diets or supplements and stuff like that that you should maybe consider if you've been diagnosed with Hashimoto's, as well as like some lab testing that may be beneficial to you.
Mm-hmm.
So if this is your first time watching or listening, please hit like and subscribe, turn on notifications, because we're going to continue to roll out new content each and every other week or so. And hopefully you guys get value out of it. So
Right.
you're the guy with the Hashimoto's. Take it away.
Let's run with it. Okay. So as previous podcast, and again, anybody can click on that, but it's the diagnosis of Hashimoto's thyroiditis, not necessarily hypothyroidism, but just Hashimoto's is elevated antibodies, TPO antibodies or TBG antibodies. So we'll say that's confirmed. And you're listening to this and you have Hashimoto's. And what can you eat? What can you do? We're trying to be very specific with this, but from a dietary standpoint, or nutritional piece, there's a lot of misconceptions like, oh, you got to supplement with iodine, and that's iodine is like the magic food for your thyroid. That is actually it's conclusive now. Before it was, you look at all these companies and you know this Dr. Kolby, a lot of these companies that maybe haven't kept up with the research, they have iodine in all their supplements. It's just what you have. And it makes sense because back in the day, everybody ended up with enlarged thyroids because we moved away from the coast. There was no iodine in anything, and iodine's mostly in the world of seafood and saltwater fish and all of that. And we weren't getting any of it in our diet, so we became iodine deficient, and then our thyroid started to enlarge, and then government health order said, let's add some iodine to salt. And there we go. And all our goiters went away. So now we have the belief system that we need iodine for our thyroids. However, the new research has been shown in multiple studies on this, multiple data around the world, that our window of iodine that we're supposed to have is very, very, very small, meaning it's a small window.
It's tight.
Yeah, it's tight. I like that. If we go over, there's a problem. More Hashimoto's, more thyroid, hyperthyroid, more hypothyroid, everything problematic if we go over. If we go under, the same thing happens. But actually, more thyroid problems if we go over. So, and now what is too much? Well, we talked about this. I can't remember what the stats were for iodine deficiencies identified in North America. I think it was like less than 5% of the population.
Yeah, I mean,
it was almost
North America, especially like North America and the United States in particular, is an iodine replete area, which means like basically you can't
avoid it.
Iodine deficient, unless you physically try to.
Yeah,
you're
right. You can't avoid it. So is there still a chance someone could be iodine deficient? Yeah, and like we talked about, just know your iodine levels. And I don't test iodine on everybody. And if I see them just below normal, I won't supplement, because now I see when I supplement, they go way over the top. And the research shows that's risky. So I don't even have iodine in my office anymore. It's not found. And I think the quantity of iodine that we need per day is smaller than the head of a salt, smaller than the salt quantity is smaller than the head of a pin. That's how much iodine we need. Okay. So it's micro amounts. So hopefully that kind of so if you have Hashimoto's and you have a bunch of iodine supplements and he told you to take a bunch, unless you have proof that your iodine levels
maybe reconsider.
Yeah, throw it out the window. I'll just say throw it out the window. And then I would even take it one step farther. Get rid of your iodized salt. Get rid of your iodized salt. That's not.
Or let's just if you have this, because this has happened to my family members even. Like I have a family member that has a goiter, and the goiter is from iodine deficiency, and I'm like, it's not. It is really not. You've never been tested. Stop making it worse.
And there's other reasons for goiters, not just iodine.
Yeah. Right? What it is it's thyroiditis. Your thyroid is really swollen. It's not that it's huge. It's just really inflamed.
Or infections, or who knows what.
Yeah, right? Or it's got a nodule or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. And if you have that, don't just assume it's a goiter. Make sure you go get it.
Make sure, right? This is the importance of diagnostics. This is why we always harp on diagnostics, because it's worth its grain. It's worth a grain of salt. Oh, that was a good pun. Did you see that?
Nice. I saw that was slick.
Plugged it right in there.
Okay, so there's our iodine. We beat the heck up out of that. Hopefully we did. I've also done on my YouTube channel. There's a elaborate study. I talk about all the studies. This is just right to the point here. Then anti-inflammatory diets. We talk about this every day and all of that. Now, I touched on it in the previous episode. There are foods that tend to aggravate Hashimoto's. Tend to. It doesn't mean that, okay, these foods are killing you. Doesn't mean that these foods are guaranteed to flare your Hashimoto's, but it's a higher probability it will. Now, to remove all these foods without knowing, I've never had maybe there's one. Say, okay, just tell me.
It's a lot easier to remove these things from your life if you know that they are causing you a problem.
Yeah, because
I can speak to this on a personal level too.
Right? Yeah. So here are the ones that I'm combing through the research: corn, simple carbohydrates, and like a lot of the different grains, gluten, cross-reactive. We talked about cross-reactive before. Soy, lectins, dairy, and legumes. These are the ones. If there's a dietary restriction, if there's a diet, say, okay, what do I avoid with Hashimoto's? This is it.
Right.
And if you want,
what I would do? I would run a food sensitivity panel to make sure.
I would. Yeah. I would. I even with Hashimoto's, I wouldn't be able to just say, okay, I'm going to avoid these just cause.
Yeah.
I think that because it's not avoided for a week or a month. It's like, no, this is going to be life for you.
Like, yeah.
And that's
my God, you can't have gluten or dairy. You know,
because it's everywhere.
All the other fun stuff out.
Right. Yeah.
It's a lot easier if you're like, yeah, I'm testing for that. Like, then know definitively, yeah, I have an antigenic response. Right.
That's right. But the foods, the highest risky foods are corn, simple carbohydrates like grains, gluten, soy, lectins, dairy, legumes. And then people are, if they're not familiar with dietary changes, they're going to be like, what the hell are you guys talking about? There's nothing else to eat. Air and water. No, there is other ways. There is other things you can eat, but this is tough. So you probably just want to test, not just blanket.
Yeah. And also maybe find someone who can help you like implement these changes, because they are huge. They're big, right? Especially with the way that most of us eat, right? And so then if you took all of those out, it would be pretty like, oh wow, what am I going to do now?
Yeah, what the heck's going on? Yeah, and it can cause problems if you remove all these. You go through withdrawals and all that. So make sure you're working with a provider that can kind of set you in the right direction, set you up, and be able to do it. Now, there's other dietary considerations, and you talked a little bit about this, I think, when we talked about cross reactivity. Do you want to talk about what that looks like and how long someone would challenge? So say someone's looking for a symptom improvement with Hashimoto's. Now, are you going to notice it or not? Maybe. But then there's the question too, if you notice it, is it cause and effect? Is it causal or is it correlated? Right. Yeah. So when I have people remove foods out of their, I always encourage people to do a food sensitivity panel, right? Because then I think if there's quantifiable data, if you could say, hey, like, look at this is what we are reacting to. This is what we should pull out. Then it's a little bit more palatable, and people are a little bit more inclined to like follow through with it. That being said, some people are like, I just want to do a food like an elimination diet, right? I always encourage them to eliminate one at a time so that they know what is making the change, right? If you remove all 7 things, you don't know what's doing it. Yeah. The other part of it is I encourage them to do it for at least 2 months, and they have to like document their symptoms every day. So at the end of 2 months, they can go,
oh, I took this out and I feel significantly better. Okay, it was definitely that. Not like I took out gluten, dairy, legumes, soy, corn, and all carbohydrates, and I feel great after 2 months. And you're like, well, what was it? They're like, I don't know, because I took out corn, grains, gluten, soy, dairy, lectins, and legumes.
That's right. That's right. And I do it a little bit differently. If we're going to do elimination diet, I get them to pull everything, and then we take more time on the reintroduction.
Sure. One at a time
So
for a longer
yeah,
period.
yeah. So some like you could do it do stepping stones to get into it, and then or do a
Stepping stones
blanket.
coming out of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's, but you got to give it a minimum of 2 months, and then be prepared for withdrawal symptoms.
Yeah.
And another thing that isn't necessarily a food removal, but it's something to pay attention to. And I think you were talking about this. Monitor and pay attention to blood sugar levels.
Yeah.
If you have a spike and a crash due to these foods, if you remove these foods, you're probably going to eliminate a lot of spikes and crashes
Yes.
in blood sugar. But you should never, 3 rules of foods. This was, I think, at a seminar we went to a long time ago. I know I was at it. 3 rules of foods. 1, you should never gain energy after you eat. If you gain energy after you eat, that means your blood sugar was too low. Some people will hear that and say, hey, that's crazy, because that's why I eat.
Every time I eat, I feel
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, well, that means it's too low to begin with. So you should never gain energy after you eat. You should never lose energy after you eat, because that usually means that food spiked you, and then you crashed. And you do not want a spike or a crash with autoimmune anything. You want a nice, stable, linear blood sugar throughout the day. And then the third thing, which is more of a digestive problem, you should never feel bloated after a meal. So you should never gain energy after a meal, never lose energy after a meal. You should never feel bloated after a meal. So if you ever have any energy fluctuations when you eat, that means your blood sugar isn't stable. Want to correct that, and work with a provider, or snack more frequently. But you got to be eating the right foods for this. So
absolutely,
another piece, critical. That's a critical piece to autoimmunity, not just Hashimoto's.
Yeah. Yep. Because you want to promote inflammation.
Yeah.
Right.
And as we talked about in the last episode, Hashimoto's is a serious thing. It's an autoimmunity. If you have one, you can have other autoimmunities. It's a much higher chance. So, make sure you're working with a provider or somebody that can guide you through this, and you don't have to rely exclusively 100% on YouTube videos to try to navigate through this. This is a real deal. Get the proper diagnostics, be confident knowing what's what, make sure the provider is explaining things, not dismissing TPO or TBG antibodies, saying that really doesn't matter. It matters every day of the week. And then start exploring foods. I think it's a very, very powerful thing. And again, you could do the carpet bombing, remove everything, and then reintroduce, or kind of like you do, Dr. Kolby, remove one at a time and see when you start feeling better. Or better yet, just do the test.
Do the testing. Yeah.
Do the test, because whatever you find, you're going to want to know.
Yeah. And then definitively. It's like, I have IgAs and IgGs,
Yeah. And it's not going to be for a day or a month or a week or 2 months. Yeah. It's going to be for life.
Yeah. So again, this was a comment actually from our email. And if you'd like to get a hold of us, our email is info@brainstormingwiththedocs.com. You can get a hold of us on our website too. Mine is northlakeschiropractic.com. Dr. Glenn's is drgharrison.com. You can leave a comment below. We usually check those. Dr. Glenn's a little better at that than I am. But again, hit like and subscribe, turn on notifications. We're going to continue to roll out new content every other week or so. And hopefully we get something that's applicable to you. So
that's right. Well, that's
all right,
good,
buddy.
I look forward to the next one. Okay. Bye-bye.